So today we're going to build a road racing beast. Let's start off with the Acura RSX. The Acura RSX has the K20 motor. The K20 motor is essential to our build because Honda has a long lineage of racing in the drag racing world where it's only a 4-cylinder, but you strap on a turbo to it and now you're making a lot of horsepower, and the chassis is so light to where the power to weight ratio is such a big thing. And additionally, once you add traction, it's a beast. So we're going with the Acura RSX. We're looking for an affordable price, nothing too cheap, but nothing too expensive, because we don't want that many miles on the motor. But secondly, we don't want to spend so much money on the actual build. We're trying to find a clean, we're trying to find something in the middle. Right here, I found something for the price of $9,998. It's a very clean build. So this is a very good baseline. Let's add this up to $9,999. The next thing we're going to do is hit Real Street Performance. Since the Honda K20 has been built for so long, people have many different combinations. So we're going with Brandon's 1100 wheel horsepower K20 build. We already have the build recipe. So this is a daily streetable 1000 wheel horsepower with the fuel consistent of E85. So the first thing we're going to need to do is build the motor. We have I-beam connecting rods for the Acura RSX for a price of $1,319. The next thing we're going to need is to purchase some thrust washers. Afterwards is going to be some rod bearings. These go into the side of the rod. So you put those in and push them. Afterwards, you're going to need to upgrade the oil pump. You're going to need to purchase the oil pump for $395. Additionally, you're going to need to purchase some main bearings. These go between the crankshaft and the rods. Afterwards, you're going to need the wrist pins. These slide to connect the crankshaft. These slide to connect the pistons and the rod. Afterwards, you're going to need some head studs. Next thing, you're going to need some pistons. The pistons are essential to this build because these change the compression ratio to a 10-0 for a price of $899.99. I'll have a calculator towards the top right. Afterwards, we're going to need to purchase the crank pulley for a small price of $372.49. So these are essential to this build because we are building a 1000 wheel horsepower daily. The next thing that goes into a build is the engine head. We're going to start by purchasing the camshaft. We're going to purchase a Brian Crower Stage 2 all motor camshaft. This will run you a price of $856.12. These have a cam duration of 304/30. The next thing you're going to need to do is purchase another set of engine heads. I'm not going to add these into the cost, so I'm going to subtract these because we already purchased those prior. So the next thing is a drive shaft. So these are together. Clutch Masters produces a triple disc race clutch and flywheel. These are connected as one for a small price of $1,597.50. These are definitely rated for 1000 wheel horsepower. The next thing you're going to need to do is purchase a drive shaft. So the drive shaft comes from Drive Shaft Shop for 800, that is rated for 850 horsepower. I'm not going to add this into the price due to the fact that I have something to show you guys a little bit later, because this is an all-wheel drive RSX build. So take that into account. Afterwards, we're going to need to upgrade the fuel and intake system. So our fuel system is going to be rated for about the same horsepower, 1100 horsepower. We're going to need to purchase some Injector Dynamics 1300cc fuel injectors for a price of $945. These are a very big injector. They spit out a lot of fuel. The next thing we're going to need to do is purchase a 2000 horsepower Pro Tuning's fuel pump. With the Pro Tuning 2000 horsepower inline fuel pump, the way it's going to be set is there is a fuel filter prior, then the fuel pump in the middle, and another fuel filter afterwards. It is an 8AN. An 8AN fuel line is a very big fuel line, and when producing a lot of horsepower, you don't want to be limited by your fuel line, because when pushing a lot of fuels, you don't want to starve the motor and things like that. So 8AN fuel lines are essential to this build. I'm going to add an extra cost because this part doesn't include it. Another thing you're going to need to do is you need to purchase an adjustable regulator. This is going to cost you a price of $240. Regulator, all that was a fuel pressure regulator, something that sits in the motor. We're also going to need nitrous for this build, a single dry shot of nitrous of 150, so basically 150 shot. Another thing is the inline fuel filter. As I mentioned earlier, you're gonna need 2 of these, one before the fuel pump and one after. Both of them are about a price of $205.95 each, and that will be added upwards. Afterwards, you can't have a built motor and not have no power. To add power, we're gonna need to purchase a big turbo. A big turbo is our precision turbo that rated for 1200 horsepower. This is a 7275 ball bearing for $2,832.58. In my opinion, there's a lot of other turbos that can get you that's approximately that same size and way less. Another thing is the tile blow-off valve. You can purchase that tile blow-off valve 50mm for $278.95. But back to the turbo, you can purchase the same size turbo, if not a bigger turbo, for a lot cheaper from VS Racing. However, Precision Turbo is a very, very reputable company, but there are other turbos out there, so I'm going to include a price range. So another thing you're also going to need for this build is the tile 60mm wastegate. This is going to cost you about $579.60. The first part of the build is done. The second part is the extra necessities. We're going to need a turbo manifold. Another thing we're going to need to do is add an intercooler, a big intercooler at that, with extra stainless steel pipes. All of this will cost us a price of about $2,900. The next thing we're going to need to do is go to K20 Built and purchase their all-wheel drive conversion kit. This comes with all the materials needed for the all-wheel drive build. The next thing you're going to need is the CRV differential. This goes in the back that helps the all-wheel drive build. So the all-wheel drive transmission is coming from a early 2000s Honda CRV with a K24 motor. These will run you about $1,200 to $1,300. There are many options for the differential. You can source a lot of these parts on eBay. Another thing that K20 also provides is the short axles. These connect to the differential in the rear. That helps the all-wheel drive build. The next thing we're going to need to do is purchase the drive shaft. This drive shaft is rated for approximately 1100 horsepower, which is perfect for our Acura RSX. One thing that's needed for this build is the subframe. The next thing we're going to get into is tuning. We're going to be tuning using the i-VTEC Elite 550. This is more than enough for our motor. It's allow us to go all the way up to 45 pounds of boost. We're going to use King's Motorsports to tune. King's Motorsports is established and stamped into the drag racing world. They have many different builds. Like one example here is one car going 222 miles per hour at 6 seconds and 38, so basically a quarter mile. Last but not least, we're gonna hit drag racing parts. They have all the Honda things you need for drag radials and drag wheel setups. Go hit them. So our grand total for this build is $37,360.79. So we're going to go to Auto Trader and see what does this build compare to. As you can see, there are scat packs, BRZs, and a lot of S550 Mustang GTs. So in my opinion, this was definitely worth the build. If you enjoyed the video, thank you for watching and subscribe for more.